Long before the world came to know her as the people's princess, Diana Frances Spencer was just a shy little girl growing up in the English countryside. Born in 1961 at Park House, a home on the royal estate of Sandringham, she was the fourth of 5 children in a family with noble roots. But her childhood was not a fairy tale. Her parents' marriage fell apart when she was very young, and Diana carried the emotional weight of their separation quietly. She struggled in school, excelling more in dance and music than in academics, and her teachers often described her as gentle, reserved, and sensitive. Despite her shyness, Diana's kindness shone through. She loved caring for children and often spoke of wanting to become a ballerina or a nursery teacher. This dream of working with children would later foreshadow her lifelong compassion. Yet her path was about to change dramatically, leading her from ordinary dreams to extraordinary circumstances. By her late teens, Diana was living in a London flat with friends, working part-time as a nanny and at a kindergarten. She lived modestly, taking the bus to work, cooking simple meals, and laughing with her roommates about the small struggles of everyday life. No one could have guessed that this young woman, known among her friends for her warmth and humor, would soon step into the most scrutinized spotlight in the world. In 1980, Diana's life changed when she caught the attention of Prince Charles, heir to the British throne. At first, she was seen as a suitable match because of her aristocratic background and gentle nature. But what drew Charles to her was her innocence and kindness, qualities rare in a world of constant formality and duty. Soon, their relationship became the focus of the British press, who followed her every move. At just 19 years old, Diana went from living in a London flat to being photographed by paparazzi outside her workplace. In February 1981, the announcement of her engagement to Prince Charles shook the world. Reporters swarmed the young Diana, eager to capture every detail of the fairy tale romance. She wore a sapphire engagement ring that would later become iconic, but beneath her smile, there was a sense of uncertainty. Diana was stepping into a role that would demand everything from her privacy, her freedom, and her heart. That summer, nearly 750 million people around the world watched the royal wedding. On July 29, 1981, Diana walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral in a gown that seemed to belong to a storybook, with a 25-foot train flowing behind her. The cheers of the crowds, the grandeur of the ceremony, and the cameras flashing from every angle created the illusion of a perfect dream. She was just 20 years old, suddenly transformed from a young nursery assistant into the Princess of Wales. Yet even in those early days, Diana began to feel the weight of her new role. She was adored by the public, who saw her as a fresh, compassionate face in a rigid monarchy, but behind palace walls, life was not as magical as the world imagined. Diana struggled with the strict rules, the constant public attention, and the pressures of being married to the future king. Still, there was something within her, an inner strength and empathy, that began to set her apart. While others in the royal family kept their distance, Diana leaned into the crowds, touched people's hands, looked into their eyes, and listened to their stories. She had not yet found her full voice, but the seeds of the people's princess were already taking root. Part 1 closes with Diana standing on the balcony of Buckingham Palace on her wedding day, smiling and waving at the crowds. The world saw a radiant young bride, but inside, Diana was beginning to sense that her journey would not simply be about living a fairy tale, it would be about rewriting what it meant to be royal, and more importantly, what it meant to be human. The fairytale wedding had made Diana one of the most famous women in the world, but life as the Princess of Wales was far more complicated than anyone watching from the outside could imagine. The grandeur of palaces and tiaras was real, but so were the walls of loneliness that surrounded her. Diana, barely out of her teenage years, had entered a marriage that placed her under constant public scrutiny, while behind closed doors, cracks were already forming. Her relationship with Prince Charles was strained almost from the beginning. Their personalities were vastly different. Diana was empathetic, emotional, and yearned for closeness, while Charles often seemed distant, preoccupied with his duties and with the woman who remained in his heart, Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana quickly realized that her marriage would not be the fairy tale she had dreamed of, and this realization left her heartbroken. Amid her struggles, Diana also faced intense pressure from the media. Photographers followed her relentlessly on walks, on vacations, even outside her home. She became the most photographed woman in the world. Every outfit she wore was analyzed, every word she spoke was repeated, and every expression on her face was scrutinized. She felt trapped between the image of perfection demanded by the monarchy and the reality of her private pain. But even in her struggles, Diana's strength began to shine. She became a devoted mother to her two sons, Prince William, born in 1982, and Prince Harry, born in 1984. Motherhood gave her a sense of purpose and grounding. Diana was determined that her boys would not grow up in a bubble of privilege. She took them on public outings, waited in line for fast food with them, and even allowed them to experience life beyond palace gates. Her love for William and Harry was fierce and unconditional. They were her greatest source of joy. It was during this time that Diana began to discover her true power, not in the titles she carried, but in the way she connected with people. While other royals often kept their distance, Diana broke tradition by reaching out directly. She shook hands with hospital patients, hugged children, and knelt down to speak with people at eye level. These simple acts of compassion resonated with millions. Perhaps the most powerful example came in 1987, when Diana visited a London hospital treating HIV/AIDS patients. At a time when fear and stigma surrounded the illness, she made headlines by shaking hands, without gloves, with a man suffering from AIDS. The gesture was revolutionary. With that single act, Diana helped change public perception of the disease, proving that compassion could cut through ignorance and fear. Her charity work grew as her role in the royal family became more complicated. Diana used her platform to shine a light on causes others ignored: homelessness, mental health, and the dangers of landmines in war-torn countries. Wherever she went, crowds gathered not just to see a princess but to feel understood, seen, and loved. She became, in the words of the press, the people's princess. Still, the pressures of her personal life weighed heavily on her. The public adoration contrasted sharply with her private pain. She battled with feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, and an eating disorder, bulimia, that consumed much of her early married life. For years, Diana felt silenced by the expectations of the monarchy, her struggles hidden behind carefully curated appearances. By the early 1990s, the tension between Diana and Charles was impossible to hide. The couple separated in 1992, and by 1996, they officially divorced. For Diana, the divorce was both devastating and liberating. She had lost the title of Her Royal Highness, but she had regained a sense of independence. She no longer had to fit into the mold of royal life, and she could now pursue her causes with greater freedom. Diana's transformation after her divorce was striking. Free from some of the restrictions of palace life, she stepped fully into her role as a humanitarian. She traveled the world to support charities, walking through minefields in Angola to raise awareness of the deadly weapons left behind in conflict zones. She worked tirelessly for children's hospitals, supported cancer patients, and continued to advocate for those living with HIV/AIDS. Her compassion transcended borders, languages, and cultures. Yet through all of this, Diana remained deeply human. She was open about her struggles, her vulnerability, and her desire simply to be loved. This honesty only deepened the world's affection for her. People did not just see her as a princess, they saw her as someone who embodied both grace and imperfection, someone who turned pain into purpose. By the mid-1990s, Diana had become more than a member of the British royal family. She was a global icon, admired not for her crown but for her courage and compassion. She had faced heartache, isolation, and relentless scrutiny, yet she continued to stand tall, driven by a desire to use her platform to make the world a little kinder. Part 2 closes with Diana walking confidently through a field of landmines in Angola in 1997, wearing a protective vest and a determined expression. Cameras captured the moment, and the image traveled across the globe. It symbolized not just her humanitarian spirit, but also her willingness to walk into dangerous places, literally and figuratively, to fight for those without a voice. The world adored her, but no one could know that her remarkable journey was nearing its tragic end. Part 3 will tell the final chapter of Princess Diana's story, the legacy she left behind, and the heartbreak that shook the world. Free from the confines of royal life, Diana embraced her newfound independence with determination and grace. No longer bound by the rigid rules of the monarchy, she threw herself wholeheartedly into humanitarian work. Traveling across continents, she became a beacon of compassion, advocating for those most often forgotten. From hospitals to war zones, Diana made it her mission to shine a light where others looked away. In 1997, one of her most iconic moments unfolded in Angola, where she walked through an active minefield wearing protective gear. The sight of a princess stepping fearlessly into danger captured the world's attention. It wasn't just a photo opportunity, it was a statement that every life, no matter how distant or overlooked, was worth protecting. Her efforts helped bring global awareness to the campaign to ban landmines, influencing governments and shaping international policy. Despite her humanitarian triumphs, Diana's personal life remained under the glare of relentless media scrutiny. Paparazzi pursued her at every turn, hungry for a photograph, a headline, or a glimpse into her private affairs. Her relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed, the son of a wealthy businessman, only heightened the frenzy. Diana longed for peace and normalcy, but her fame ensured that she could never truly escape the spotlight. Then came the night of August 31, 1997. Diana and Dodi left the Ritz Hotel in Paris, hounded by photographers. Their car sped through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, chased by flashing cameras, before crashing in a tragedy that shook the world. Diana was rushed to the hospital, but despite desperate efforts, she was pronounced dead in the early hours of the morning. She was just 36 years old. The news of her death sent shockwaves across the globe. Crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace, covering the gates in seas of flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. Millions wept openly, mourning a woman they had never met but felt they knew. The grief was unlike anything the modern world had witnessed, uniting people across nations, cultures, and backgrounds. At her funeral, watched by an estimated 2.5 billion people, Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, paid tribute to her compassion, resilience, and humanity. Elton John performed a reworked version of Candle in the Wind, capturing the world's sorrow and admiration for a life cut short. William and Harry, still just boys, walked behind their mother's coffin, leaving an image that would remain etched in history. Though Diana's life ended in tragedy, her legacy endures. She transformed the role of royalty, proving that compassion could be more powerful than tradition. She broke barriers around subjects others feared to touch, from AIDS awareness to mental health, giving voice to those who had none. Her openness about her struggles made her relatable, her kindness made her unforgettable, and her courage made her immortal in the hearts of millions. To this day, Princess Diana remains a symbol of love, humanity, and hope. Her story is not only one of glamour and heartbreak but also of strength and transformation. She showed the world that true greatness lies not in crowns or castles but in the ability to reach out, touch lives, and make the world a little kinder. And though she is gone, the people's princess continues to live on in her sons, in her causes, and in the millions of hearts she inspired.